Welcome to the Faces of Grand Prairie, a community podcast where we interview people who live, work, and serve in my hometown of Grand Prairie, Texas. This podcast is made possible through business sponsorships and generous donations from listeners like you. If you like what we're doing, support us at the link below. But now, here's a word from our local sponsors. Jenna Pecor is a realtor with Bancroft Realty, a Grand Prairie-based real estate brokerage. Jenna earned her Seniors Real Estate Specialist designation through the National Association of Realtors and has worked with Grand Prairie buyers and sellers over the age of 55 and their families for over 10 years. She hosts a monthly support group for adult children of aging parents, and this month's topic is Parents, Family, and Real Estate. We'll discuss the sometimes difficult interactions between family members when selling a loved one's home and belongings. Join us June 10th from 5:30 to 7:30 at the Grand Prairie Chamber of Commerce, located at 900 Conover Drive in Grand Prairie. Amanda Herrera with Ameliorate Counseling is a fellow SGPHS alum and a licensed professional counselor associate in DFW. She provides compassionate therapy in an online setting. She helps women who are burnt out or overwhelmed in a difficult transition of life. Amanda is passionate about helping women finding their path to a fulfilling life of self-acceptance and healing. On a personal note, Amanda has a calming and kind spirit, one that is sincere about helping women find their way. If you'd like to book an introductory session to visit Amanda, go to her website at amelioratecounselingtx.com and click the Book Your Session Here button at the top of the page. A link to her booking session will also be available in the description below. Coffee News is a weekly publication delivered to restaurants, coffee shops, hotels, and anywhere people go to have a bite to eat or wait for service. Everything in Coffee News is fun and entertaining. It is a breath of fresh air for millions of readers tired of hearing only bad news. Coffee News is always positive. At Coffee News of Grand Prairie, their mission is to help small and medium-sized local businesses grow with affordable, exclusive advertising. This means that your ad is being viewed every day. Coffee News editions are placed in businesses where people are waiting for food and service. The distribution locations are chosen carefully to ensure you have the largest viewing audience. With exposure 3 meals a day, 7 days a week, your ad reminds current clients and customers to return to your business for products or services while constantly creating interest for potential new clients or customers. Go to coffeenewsgp.com to learn more. My Generosity Estate Sales has been providing estate liquidation services in Grand Prairie since 2015. They are a trusted member of the Grand Prairie community and a proud affiliate of the Arlington Board of Realtors. Generosity Estate Sales specializes in helping adult children through the emotionally difficult process of liquidating a loved one's estate and helping seniors downsize for their next phase of life. To find out more about their services or follow their upcoming sales, go to mygenerosityestatesales.com. And now, on to our episode. Hello, Chad.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Welcome to the Faces of Grand Prairie podcast.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
I'm glad that you're here. This is actually the first time that I've done it like this because you're not actually in Grand Prairie right now.
Not right now. In a couple of weeks, I'll be there.
Oh, you are? Are you coming back through to visit?
Yeah, we're going to be traveling there for Mother's Day. So we'll be there Mother's Day weekend. Yeah.
Well, tell people who you are and why you're here.
So I'm Chad Hasty, graduated from South Grand Prairie High School back in 2001. It doesn't seem like that long ago until I say 2001, and then it does seem like a long time ago. And grew up in Grand Prairie, born and raised in Grand Prairie, went to all the GPISD schools. And of course, my parents still live in Grand Prairie. They still live on the same street that I basically grew up on. And so graduated from South Grand Prairie, went on to Texas Tech University, graduated from Tech, and have Reckham Tech. Have stayed out there since. And I've got a great radio show that we air in Lubbock, Amarillo, Abilene, Wichita Falls, and really across West Texas. And it's just been a nice little blessing as we continue to grow the show over the last few years.
Well, that is so cool. I just thought it was so interesting. I'm always interested when people get into radio. I don't know why that is such a fascination for me,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's just cool. So, did you grow? You went to South Grand Prairie. So, did you grew up on the south side of town? I assume.
Yeah, grew up on the south side of town, south of I-20, and that's where but we started off in, let's see, my first childhood home was in Trailwood. I remember that. Remember
Mhm.
exactly where the house is. Remember where we buried our bunny that we had. I remember that. And then I think it was third grade, we moved into Westchester, and my parents still live in that neighborhood.
That's awesome. Well,
Yeah,
and at the time when we were growing up, that was about the southernmost part of Grand Prairie, and now
yeah.
it's expanded even more. So,
I,
how
it,
often do you come through?
we are usually there at least during the major holidays, but I would say we try to get back to Grand Prairie at least 4 to 5 times a year. And
And
so
when you come back, does it change?
it's shocking. It is. I will get lost. Like my parents will be driving around and they're like, "Well, it's just over here." I'm like, "Yeah, okay." Once we go south, like once I even get close to I guess Joe Pool Lake. I'm lost at that point.
Yep,
Behind Garner Element, the old Garner where there was nothing behind
nothing.
Garner Elementary.
It's
I
crazy.
don't recognize it. I have no idea where I'm at when I'm driving. And then, of course, once 161 came through, and by the way, still hate the exit on the Carrier Parkway, which I'm used to the old exit, the nice and easy exit on the Carrier.
Oh,
Then
you're talking about the north side of town.
yeah,
Yeah.
they messed up. Well, no, over by Cheddar's and Chili, like that whole area. Once
Oh,
they
yeah,
redid that, I'm
yeah,
like, how am I supposed to exit now?
I
So
know.
yeah, I have to get used to that. Whenever I drive in, but it's fun. And 161 has blown up. In fact, we're going to be staying at one of the hotels at the Epic. Near the Epic, I guess,
Oh,
when we come in. So yeah,
that'll be cool. That'll be really neat. No, I totally know what you mean. I mean, I literally grew up off Carrier, and I-20. That's where my parents still live. I lived just barely north of 20, where the old Coles used to be.
yeah.
And so, even exiting now, like I can't tell you how many times I've missed it. And then I have to go down that line and then come around, and I'm like, it's or Deckman now. It's Deckman, which is in between Carrier and Bell. It's crazy
Yeah, where
how
did Deckman come from?
I I don't know, but Deckman was the guy that founded Grand Prairie.
He was, yeah. So I guess
Yes.
now he gets his due. He
Yeah,
is like the backup exit for
right.
everyone now.
But back in the day, that used to be like a dirt road. I
Yeah,
remember before they even built the UA theater and all that stuff. It was like my friend lived over by the soccer fields. That's what we called it, the neighborhood by the soccer fields. And to
yeah,
get there, it was just a dirt road. And
yeah,
now it's
exactly.
crazy.
And if it's the road I remember, you'd cross the interstate, and then it was this windy road, which was probably very dangerous many times.
Yeah.
But it was this windy road that people would go 60 down and have to do the turn, and they would end up sometimes in the trees. But yeah, they've changed all of that now.
And then you get hit by golf balls because it was over
Yeah,
by what was the name of that place? It's
Fun
not there
City.
anymore. Fun City. Yes, Fun City. Oh my gosh, that's
Yeah, I'm
crazy.
old school. I'm old school GP.
Yeah,
That's
old school
right.
PP. That's right. But Lubbock is the same. Like I went to Tech in '98, and
Yeah.
so even since I was there, it was crazy how much it's blown up. Because they hadn't done anything with the new stadium yet, but they were just putting out apartments and stuff around the north side of the loop, which there
Mhm.
wasn't anything around there at that time. So I'm sure you've seen a lot of growth even up there.
Oh, it's been huge. It's been since I moved here. The city is probably seems like it's doubled in size. It easily quadrupled, and there's just the amount of buildings and things to do. And that's the big thing is that there's a lot of stuff to do now in Lubbock, and people when they I think, and I think especially a lot of college students, when we first got out here, it was like, well, we could go to the Depot District. We could go. That's about it. That's it. Now we
Midnight
have
Rodeo.
Yeah, exactly. Now we have stuff. There's other, there's a lot of things to do, and it's a growing city, and it's like Grand Prairie. It's just it's fun seeing the development and seeing all this new stuff come in, and really the city change just over the last 20 years.
Yeah. So when you were growing up, is radio or broadcasting something that was on your radar to do as a career?
So a little bit. It was I was probably known for talking too much in school. Like apparently a lot of my former teachers, when my when my mom or dad would tell them, "Oh yeah, Chad's in radio," they're like, "Yeah, that makes
That
sense.
makes
That's we could never shut them
sense.
up." But I was always interested in politics, and I honestly I was expecting to go to college, go to law school, maybe get into politics, and through that point, and then basically my I guess it was junior senior year, I started listening to a lot of talk radio, and at that time it was. I would listen to from whether it was Mark Davis in Dallas, who was still on the air, Russ Martin on 105.3 at the time, and Stern, and just so I consumed all these different types of talk radio. I went, that's fun. That seems like it would be a lot of fun. And my original idea behind the show was really politics as a side, and it was just going to be fun talk radio. That kind of got blown up with censorship and the FCC kind of coming down on a lot of stuff. So I went, okay, got into a little bit of sports radio as an intern, enjoyed that, and then it's just the politics just really started fueling me in college. And I went, okay, that's what I want to do, but I want to have fun with it. I don't want people to be beat down by politics. I don't want people to, there are people who get on the air and will scream and holler and be like, "You're an idiot, you're stupid." I'll admit sometimes that comes up, but that's not the main gist of the show. I want to have fun with it. I want people to be informed as to what's going on, but also entertained at the same time. And that's kind of what kicked off everything.
Well, to be fair, that happens in sports a lot too. I
Yeah,
mean, when you listen to the ticket, people get passionate about that
yeah,
too. So,
absolutely. Well, and that's part of the I think that's part of the problem is that, at least in the political world, is that we've adopted the sports side, and kind of the
mm,
worst part of the sports side, to politics, where now if you're on one side, well, okay, it's the Cowboys versus the Eagles every single week, and the hatred just comes out.
right.
Uh, and so you see a lot of that now in politics, where it's like, well, we've got to divide up in the sides. We had to
Yeah.
divide up in the sides. I think a lot of people forget at the heart of it, we are all Americans. We should be striving, for the best of the best. Yes, there are differences. Yes, we have our different opinions, and it's good to be passionate, but don't let the hatred, kick in, because that's where you start losing things.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm also somebody that started following politics too. But I will say this is one of the reasons why I wanted to do something local like this. Getting rid of local newspapers and local media outlets where it's just reporting on your community, I
Yeah.
think has actually contributed to that mentality. It's local politics and local elections are very different than when you have the huge federal elections. And I think that the bigger, when I say bigger, I mean like the more further away an election or the process is from where you are, the easier it is to just get really in your own side, and you can start talking a lot of bad things about the other side. But when it's your neighbor that's literally on city council, or you go to church with them, or you're going to out to eat with them later, you're not going to be that way. And the more that you can keep that community mindset, you can argue about whether or not we should have more pickleball courts or less pickleball courts or whatever, without it being so personally vindictive. And
Yeah.
so that's one of the reasons why I personally wanted to bring back something like this. I wanted people to remember, like, your local elections, your local, things are very, very important. And we just kind of lost that. So bringing back the community, it makes it a lot harder to be ugly,
Yeah.
and you have
Well,
more accountability.
I love what you're doing because I think, for Grand Prairie, especially, Grand Prairie's not focused on. The Dallas Morning News, they're going to focus on Dallas. They're going to focus on Fort Worth. They're going to focus on Arlington. They're going to focus on Frisco. They're going to focus on some of the bigger cities that are out there. And they're probably also going to take a look at where their subscriptions are and go, well, okay, that city has more subs than this city, so we're going to focus on them. And so the political world in Grand Prairie gets lost. And so that's something that, you're right, politics, the government closest to the people, how we were set up to begin with, the government closest to the people, that's what's supposed to matter the most. You look at where the majority of your taxes go to and who taxes you. It's local. And people don't know, they can't name their city. Forget about congressmen. They can't name their city councilman. They can't name their superintendent. They can't name their school board member. And we've lost that even out here in Lubbock, where we have local news that's focusing. Because of all the cutbacks in news, you have reporters who they don't know who these people are either, and so they're not going out and interviewing them, and so it's led to a lot of ignorance in the community, and this is across America,
Yeah,
to where
absolutely.
people don't know who their locally elected officials are. And that's a bad thing, because people need to be very involved in local
Yes.
politics, because it matters. It really does matter. So that's why I love what you're doing by interviewing all the people of Grand Prairie, bringing folks on who are making decisions, because it gives folks another way of meeting these people and knowing who they are. And that's one thing that I've done on my show, is trying to bring in people where we do these long form interviews, kind of marrying the podcast and the radio side of going, let's get down to who you really are.
Right.
Let's talk about, what motivated you to get into politics, what motivated you to get into the business world. And we've had a lot of folks who have reached out to me who are like, we love this because we're getting in depth into real people. And so I think it's great what you're doing.
Not clips, not just like little bitty 3-minute clips,
Yeah.
which are helpful. That's fine. But having not like property taxes, okay? Even knowing the civics of how things work in your city, when your property taxes go up, why? Where does that come from? Who decides how much my property taxes are going to be? How much, and it's like trying to teach it. People have forgotten, like even going to a school board meeting, like those kinds of things. The majority of the property tax that you get taxed goes to your school district.
Yeah.
Well, they decide what that tax rate's going to be, but nobody goes to those meetings to say, this is what I think y'all should be doing. They get caught up in a lot of things that at the end of the day don't really affect them. Don't really affect most Americans. And, but the local stuff always is going to affect you.
Absolutely.
And so it's very important to me, not just to have people on to talk about that, but also to talk about, how does your city run?
Yeah.
Like, who does things and why did they decide to do the things that they do? What are the civics of it? Okay, well, and if you're a local elected official that's running for city council, why are you talking about schools?
Yeah.
You don't have anything to do with that. But it's like, but a lot of people that don't understand what even they do, how are you supposed to hold people accountable in your own local city if you don't actually even know what all these people are responsible for? So for me, that's very important, is educating citizens, but also just to remember that there's people that live here that do a lot of things that nobody ever sees and talks about. So, I mean, and I think that there's going to be a more local push for things moving forward, and having businesses that are more locally focused. And I don't know, I see a lot of entrepreneurship coming in the very near future, like small business, people starting small businesses with, just the things happening in the country. It's going to be a big deal, I think.
Oh yeah.
But yeah,
I think so.
Yeah, that's important to me. But so like when you started, like, did you have like a show in college? Like, how did you even get into doing this?
So I started off as an intern, and I went and interned for a radio show. It was in a different ownership group that I'm in now, and it was called the Williams and Hyatt Show, and it was a sports show. I was brought in as the intern, and I lasted maybe 2 months as the intern. They went, okay, you're good. You got this. You're good. How would you like to be? How would you like to produce a show and get paid for it? And I'm like, hey, let's do it. And they said, okay, great. So they got rid of the morning show producer, almost immediately.
So you were producing not on air talent, or were you doing both?
No, I wasn't on air. So as a producer, you're kind of behind the scenes, at least in Lubbock and how Lubbock radio is set up. As producer, you're behind the scenes and you are pushing the buttons, answering the phones, and doing all that kind of stuff. And so that's what I was doing for a morning show. Now, of course, I was still in college. The morning show was 6 to 9 a.m. Did I know that I would need to be up at 4:30 in the morning to do this? No, but I still took the job. And so I started doing it, loved it. I had a great time. And all I was doing was pushing the buttons, but I knew I was having fun. Well, about a year into it, they started letting me talk on the air. They're like, okay, so you could come on. Well, at that point, the show that I was on, they were having some problems keeping host. People kept on leaving, and I was coming on and giving my opinion, and I was told by the owner, he said, you need to stop talking because you're overshadowing the host. And I said, well, maybe that means something. Like maybe you should put me on the air. He didn't want to. He was like, you need to stop talking completely. Well, I didn't like that. So the Williams and Hyatt show, they moved over to our competitor. And I received a phone call going, hey, do you want to come over to the show and produce the Williams and Hyatt show? Hyatt will, let you talk. You can be on air, do all that. I said, absolutely. But I also want to start my own show at some point. So I went over there, and it's been 20 years now since I've been over. Yeah.
So
just celebrated.
Studio, the same place this whole time.
Yeah. 20 years. And I can't believe it. In fact, when they came in and were like, hey, you've been here for 20 years. It's like, really? Now I haven't been doing the same show for 20 years, but I've been employed there for 20 years. But my first show was on a Saturday. And so it was a Saturday, 5 to 7 p.m., I think, radio show. And I had a co-host, and we kind of cycled through co-hosts. And then I got to, bring a friend in, got to bring another friend on to do it. And then in 2008, so I did that show for about 2.5, 3 years. Then in 2008, graduated from tech, did all that kind of good stuff, and I got the morning show. And it was me and another longtime guy who was there. And so it was Lubbock's First News is what it was called. And it was 6 to 9 a.m. And so I was up every morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, getting getting prepared, ready to do the show. And that's really where, I started making so many contacts in the political world and inviting people on. And, at the time, the show was obviously very focused on Lubbock, and we kept it focused on Lubbock. But I went in with the mentality that this was going to be a show that could air in Dallas if I wanted it to. I didn't want small town radio, and that wasn't something I was interested in. And I thought Lubbock was growing at a pace to where they need a really good show that would bring on national figures. And so that's what I went, I'm going to start doing that. And so we focused a lot on the morning show and on the local folks. But then we started getting, John Cornyn. He would call in, and we would get him on. And the congressman for that time was Randy Neugebauer. And I still remember to this day that they sent me, because they were used to coming on the show just once a month. They would come on. Well, I started amping it up a little bit and said, I want them on more often. And they would send me questions to ask the congressman. And I went, the first time I got the questions, I didn't ask any of the questions that they sent me.
Ah.
And then the second time they sent me questions, I didn't ask any of the questions. And they were like, are you getting the question? I'm like, yeah, but I'm not going to ask any of those. So you can send me. And they're like, well, host in the past. I'm like, yeah, but they're not here anymore. So I'm not going to ask any questions that you have pre-prepared him for. I'm going to ask now. I'll tell you some of the ideas that I want to talk about. I'll tell you, some of the main topic, but there's going to be a time where I'm just going to pop him with a question that he's not going to see. And so we had to develop a little bit of trust on that, because I guess they were afraid that I was just going to do gotcha radio on them every single time. But they started realizing, okay, this guy just doesn't want to be controlled. And so because that's my main thing. And I've had politicians who have said, if you're going to have our guy on, you've got to ask our questions. And I've told them flat out, no, I don't do that. Go on a different radio show, go on a different program and have fun. So started doing that, had great ratings. Everything went well. And then a few years later, Obama got elected. And then I think, it was the October before Obama's reelect when a national host named Neil Bortz retired. And we decided to move me to that time slot. And that was 10, let's see, what time was it? I think, 9 to 11 a.m. So right before Rush Limbaugh, it was me. I was the intro to Rush, and that was awesome. So I went 8:30 to 11 a.m. For years and years. Went 8:30 to 11 a.m. and that's where we kind of hit it big, and we're growing the show, doing great things. Had Ted Cruz on before he was Ted Cruz. It was just this guy running, and I told his campaign, I like what Ted Cruz has to say. Come on the show every week if you guys want to come on the show. And his numbers just blew up in West Texas. And so had him on, and we've had on, almost the entire Trump family. We haven't had Trump on yet. But I mean, it just, once you kind of get into the national scene, you start getting all these national guests who want to come on. And at one point, we were talking about expanding the show into other markets. And there was some stuff that happened behind the scenes, and our 5 to 7 p.m. host, who was in a couple of other markets, they let him go. And they said, hey, do you want to do 5 to 7 p.m.? Absolutely. And immediately got picked up in Abilene and Wichita Falls. We just added Amarillo last year. And it's eventually, after about a year and a half, I was only supposed to be doing 8:30 to 11 and 5 to 7 for about 3 weeks. That turned into about a year and a half because they couldn't find anyone. Yeah, I was doing both.
Wow.
Two different shows.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. And it was something where I was just, by the time I surrendered the 8:30 to 11 show, I was basically exhausted. It was just a lot of radio. And there are hosts who can do that, but they also have a team behind them that they're booking the guests. They're finding all kinds of stuff out. I don't, out in West Texas, it's me. And, I'm booking the guest. I'm, developing the show and everything else. And so it was, it's sometimes I miss that 8:30 to 11 slot, but I love the 5 to 7. It's a lot of fun. And it's allowed me to fill in for Mark Davis. They're in the DFW area, and expand the show. And I think we're gonna keep expanding. We're talking to a few stations in East Texas now, and we're gonna take over the state at some point. That's my goal, is to be everywhere.
Well, you said a lot of things that I think are pretty prescient to what's going on in today's landscape when it comes to podcasting, radio. There's so many transitions happening with all the different types of media that people can go on to talk about. politics, whatever it is, politics for sure. I mean, we definitely know there's been a shift between listening to the news, and then now you have all these podcast avenues. One of the things that I think is, and this is kind of a insight into me starting this, you have to go, okay, what is my tone going to be? What kind of show am I going to be? And when you were talking about, am I going to be somebody that is going to be okay with being told what questions to ask? Or do I want to be a show that's going to be more like, I'm going to dictate the terms of what we're going to talk about. Those are all things that you have to think about before you start doing something like that. And I know that it seems so easy for people to just go, well, you have this person on. Why don't you just go for the jugular? And it's like, well, there's shows that are like that. Then there's also shows that are not like that. And when I'm starting a local community show, that has been something that has been a question on my mind. What kind of interviews am I going to do? Is it going to be let's talk about all the things that are going on and the wonderful positive things? Or is it going to be, I'm going to have my local councilman on and we're going to go to blows for things, it's like, but you're setting a tone, and that's a whole thing. And it's like, you do have to ask yourself those questions. I've had to ask myself those questions. There are politicians that are maybe not local, but at the state level or at the national level that I would love to have on. I don't know how I would have those conversations and still be positive, because as a person that is doing the interviewing, and you're trying to be in a neutral type of environment, it's like, how do you do that? How do you dictate that? Those are all things that you have to consider when you have these types of platforms. And so with radio, especially, like, y'all are dictated by, y'all have a regulation like the FCC. You mentioned that before, where that's not something I have to worry about. So, like, how has that been, has that affected you at all? Like, some of the limitations that you're under, and also having a time frame, like you have 5 to 7, that's it. You don't have forever to talk like some of these other freeform platforms. So what dictated kind of how your direction and how you're going to do that?
I basically, I looked at a lot of, different radio shows that I was a fan of. And I went, okay, how do they, how are they successful? What do they do that makes them successful that I can steal? Here's something that I'm going to peel back a little bit. There's no new ideas in media. None. There's nothing new in it. We're all ripping off each other. We're all adapting. We're all stealing. We're all doing something. There's no new ideas in media anymore, other than just maybe the platform and how it's delivered. Everything else, we've learned from somebody else, whether it was me learning from Rush or Russ Martin or Mark Davis, or, and picking up different things. It was, one of my favorite, there are like 3 or 4 different interviewers that I go back and look at. And I watched how some of them are on TV, have nothing, some of them are on TV. They're live interviews. Tim Russert was one of the best interviewers that you could watch back in the day. And so I always went back and watched how he would do interviews, and how he did interviews was, hey, I'm gonna throw a few softballs at you. I'm gonna throw a few softballs. I'm gonna make you real comfortable. Hey, there's this little thing that you said over here. And then if the politician was like, well, I didn't say that. Well, we have this audio clip now. How do you respond to that? How do you square that? And so I've always viewed it, and I've gotten into back and forth with politicians, but I always look at it as it needs to be a respectful conversation, because I'm inviting them onto my show. I'm inviting them into my house. I'm going to be respectful, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to agree with everything that you have to say. And so I remember just recently there was an interview that I did where I had on a lawmaker who had just declared that they're going to run for Texas Attorney General. And one of the back and forth that was already playing out on social media is that this person did not support the current Attorney General. And so I asked him about that. I said, what do you have to say about not supporting the current Attorney General? Well, Chad, I voted to acquit him during the trial. I said, yes, but you did donate to his opponent in the primary for AG. Well, yes, I did. And so it's one of those where, you still opposed them in a way. You still oppose. So what are you going to tell folks about that? How do you explain that? And so I always try to leave an opening for them to explain. If they get caught in something, how do you explain that to folks? If there's someone who I disagree with policy on, it is a why do you believe that this is the best way? I disagree with it. I think you're wrong. Right now the Texas legislature is looking at spending $5 million on film incentives. So I don't think that's personally the best use of our money right now. So what I've done when lawmakers have come on is, why is it that 3 years ago this was a horrible idea, now it's a great idea? What is it that makes it a bad idea years ago that now it's a good idea? Sell me on it. And so
and Matthew McConaughey made a video that went viral.
Yeah. And honestly, let me tell you something. Don't, some of these politicians out there, okay, if they rub shoulders with Matthew McConaughey, they're sold. They're happy. They want to be in the spotlight. If they know Taylor Sheridan and they believe they can be in the next, Yellowstone, they're going to do it. And so I don't think that's the main driver behind all this, but, behind that at least. But I do think that's part of it, is that, there's some people who are swayed by the stars that are out there. And so, but you brought up the length of time. It's one of those where, for most of my interviews, if it's a locally elected official or someone more local, I try to get them on for, 30 minutes. And I think we can, a half an hour is pretty good to get to the meat and potatoes of what you want to get to. On Wednesdays, and we're going to pick this back up after the legislative session, because we're just so busy with candidate interviews and lawmaker interviews right now to do it. But we take an entire hour out of the show and, basically flush the format of the show and just do an hour-long interview. We still have breaks. We still have ads. And but we take an hour to get into a big interview and go into detail. And I think you can usually, within an hour, which in radio terms translates to about 40 to 45 minutes, you can pretty much get to the meat and potatoes of what you want to get to with most of these folks. And with a lot of politicians, especially politicians who are more guarded, they don't want to go longer than 30 minutes. They don't want that. They want to stick to about 10 to 15 minutes and they're good.
Yeah. And there's so many things that go into that. I mean, like people from the outside see, God, why can't they do more long form interviews? It's really hard for some people to talk for a long period of time.
Yeah.
It is, like, even just in regular life, like they're not going to be the ones that are going to say, like, for me, when I worked at Texas Roadhouse and I was service manager, I would be at a table talking to guests for like an hour and a half. And my boss is like, there's other tables we need to talk to, but there's some people that can't tolerate those kinds of long conversations. So, and for me, my guests, most of them have never been interviewed, even on a podcast. So it's like, but then we have, one of our city councilmen, his name is Junior. He just graduated from UTA. He's a political science major. He loves talking about all that politics stuff. So when he came on, he talked for 3 hours and I sit there and we just went back and forth, and I'm like, that's great. But that's the beauty of the medium, is like, you can really just kind of do. And what is the purpose of them being on? Are we talking about something specific? We're talking about their life story.
Yeah.
What are we trying to do? But you mentioned before we started recording, y'all are going to be in the Capitol doing these, in the Texas Capitol. That's pretty cool. How did y'all get to come to do that?
So it's been KFYO, the station that is the local station that I'm on in Lubbock, probably going back 20, 30 years, has had a day where they've broadcasted from inside the Capitol building. And it's just been a tradition that I picked up on when I started doing the morning show. I was like, hey, I want to start doing the show from the Capitol building as well. And we would take 2 or 3 days and we'd go to the Capitol. And, we've always been blessed with very good reps in our area who've kind of had a lot of power. And so they're able to get us into a nice office and say, hey, you control my office from 8:30 to 11. And we've just been inviting, we've had the speaker, we've had the governor. One year, the governor actually moved me from the office that I was in, because it's hard for the governor to not be seen when he's walking around the Capitol. So they were like, can you come to us instead of us coming to you? I'm like, yeah, sure. So he moved me to his press office. And so he had the run of his press office. And so this time on the 28th and 29th of April, we're going to be inside the Capitol, and the Speaker of the House just happens to be from Lubbock, Texas. And so they've set us up, I mean, right off the House floor in an office, to where members of the House can just open one door, go out, walk across the hallway, and be right there. And so we're going to, right now I've got, over the course of 2 days, I've got 7 lawmakers booked. I've got another 4 or 5 that are ready to come on. And then by the time I get to Austin, I will probably on that Sunday beforehand, I'll have 3 or 4 lawmakers who will text me and be like, I didn't know you were in Austin. I want to come on the show. And so we've got lobbyists who want to come on, some other players who want to appear on the show. But I try to book the lawmakers first, and then whatever else is open, we have them on. And it's just one lawmaker after the other. And we talk about, school choice vouchers, whatever you want to call it. That's already passed, but it's still a big issue. It's passed. It's a done deal. It'll be signed off by the governor, but we'll probably talk about that with a few lawmakers. And also public school spending is going to be a big issue.
That's one of the things that I reached out to a previous school board member, a previous city councilman, and a previous state rep, Rodney Anderson. I'm hoping to have all 3 of them on at once, because I want to talk about just finance, just finance in general. But I'm very curious how the school voucher thing is going to work from a logistics perspective. How is it going to, I don't know, because I was on a school board for my daughter's charter school. So I do know about how a lot of this stuff is financed, but I'm just really curious how that's going to work. And I don't know if any of them know how it's going to work. I don't know.
There is and what I've said about it on my show, and by the way, there's another bill out there that is being offered by Senator Angela Paxton, which is not being talked about very much, but it would allow easier transfers from school district to school district, and even from within school districts. Now, I know a lot of schools have changed, and I think GPISD, it's a little bit easier to move around. Back when we were in school, if you live on that street, you're going to that school, you're going to that elementary, that junior high, and that high school. That's it. No question. If your parents get divorced, hey, then wherever dad lives, you may get to go to a different school. But now I know that Grand Prairie has kind of changed that a little bit to where it's a little bit more freer, and that school choice to be able to move to a different school district or to a different school. That's another part of school choice. So I know Angela Paxton's bill would allow easier transfers as long as the school has enough seats available. Then her bill would allow people to transfer. South Lake Carroll's come out against that bill, by the way. South Lake Carroll ISD has said we don't like that bill. I think because of football reasons. I'm not sure.
Football reasons are a lot of things.
I'm just saying, there's some of this. Let's not discount high school football at play here. I think, and I've had conversations with the governor about this. One, I think Republicans have kind of overplayed and oversold the school choice impact that it'll have. It's only going to impact 100,000 kids. That's it. They've called it universal because in theory, every kid, every family will be able to apply for this pot of money. It's 100, but in reality, only 100,000 kids are going to be impacted by this. We have 5.5 million school children in Texas. So it's 100,000. So I think both sides have kind of overplayed how this is going to impact. It's not going to crater schools. It's not going to be the silver bullet either when it comes to education. There are a lot of other issues. I did a show once where we took 2 hours and I probably could have done another 2 hours on it. And I just had teachers who are newly retired or thinking about retiring. And I said, tell me why. Tell me why you left the school. Tell me why you left teaching. And the number one answer was discipline and the lack of discipline in schools. They had had enough of being threatened and kids running amok, and nothing is being done by the schools. And that's out in West Texas. You know, I can imagine how it is in other parts of the state where you have larger schools. And so it's even worse. And we've all seen the videos online and heard stories. So I think that's a large part of it. But how all this is going to kick in? The money, none of this actually will kick in until not even the next school year. It's going to be the school year after the next. They can't, they can't
They can't
get it done by the next school year.
There's no way. Not the way that people. I don't think and people don't really need to understand exactly the logistics of how school districts get paid for students. But if you have a kid in a district, you know that you're constantly being bombarded if your kid misses a lot of school because they get paid to have kids in actual school. So it's like, and there's so much that it's based on, and it's like to be able to shift something that fast, there's no way they can pivot that quick to be able to accommodate to something that much of a change.
No, I think you'll see it. I think they're aiming for the 2026-27 school year. Is what they're aiming for. And, one of the reasons that at least the governor said they didn't make this a bigger program was, well, we didn't want to make it too small. We didn't want to make it too big. We wanted to make sure that the changes we make, that we're able to do this and get it right and do more of an incremental change. And the state's so big and has so many students that we can up it to, the 100,000 students that are going to be involved. Again, I'm anxious to see how this is going to look and how this is going to be used. Again, I think we all know that there are private schools that cost a lot more than $10,000 a year to go to. So,
and two of them that I know of closed down. Like that's the thing is it's like the private schools I will say, you and I both being from GPISD and having grown up in this town, I will say it has changed tremendously there. And that is because we had a superintendent who was very innovative in the way that she saw first of all, back when we were kids, it was the charter schools that were going to take away everything from public ISDs. My parents were both, my mom was a teacher for Zavala. My dad was an assistant principal at South after I graduated, thank goodness. And so I knew, like, when I started talking about putting my own daughter in a charter school, it was like, there was still that stigma that, charter schools are gonna just well, Dr. Hull in GPISD, which I did not agree with everything that she did. The one thing that I think that she could be a very good example for if more people did it, she was very innovative. And she said, if we don't pivot, we are going to lose students to charters. So how can we pivot in GPISD to get people to stay? Not only that, but you were talking about if you live in this area, this is the school you go to. Grand Prairie is a very large area. There's different parts. Not everybody wants to live in all the parts of Grand Prairie, but we would love to send a kid to a school, but maybe live in a different part. So she just opened it all up to school choice, and she started building academies, which I think was a tremendously smart idea. And she started focusing on CTE. That was a huge part. If I could get legislators' ears, it would be, y'all need to be focused on. And I think people now are starting to realize college is not the end all be all for every single student. Dr. Hull realized that 15 years ago. And she said, we have to have an opportunity for some of these students to learn how to do things. So what GPIC does the best, in my opinion, of any place I've ever seen is the training for CTE. Some of these kids graduate mechanics to be able to go on work for Bell Helicopter, making 6 figures a year after they graduate high school. But also, once you have school choice, so if you want to go to the Grand Prairie Fine Arts Academy, not only do your grades have to be good, but you also have to have good behavioral you can't stay there if you have terrible discipline. And when you have parents that are choosing to send their kids there, it's not just like, okay, get on a bus and go. They're much more involved in the discipline of their student, and they are going to expect higher things of them. And I think that if school districts could be just a little bit more innovative in the way that they see that, it would be amazing how they could transform the ISDs. I'm actually interviewing the new superintendent next week, and I'm having two internship students from the media department of Dubisky come on and interview them with me. And I thought, how often do you ever see that? Nobody ever has kids on to talk to these people that are responsible for their decisions. So
Yeah.
that is something that I'm looking forward to. But I mean, I think that ISDs have just gotten so set in their ways, it's hard for them to see a pivot. And
Yeah.
I think that there's ways to pivot where you won't even need private schools. If you could pivot enough, there could be options, but
Yeah.
it's hard to get people to steer that ship in a different direction.
People don't like change.
No.
And when money is involved, people really don't like change. And I do applaud GPISD for, making that switch over to where parents can say, yeah, we still want to live here, but that's a better school for my kid over there. And they send their kid to that school. And when you and I were going through high school, it was the college or bust mentality. That's no longer there. And I think not just in GP, but I think throughout a lot of America, that idea that you just have to go to college. College isn't for everybody. And like you said, when you can get out of GPISD, go to Bell Helicopter. If you can go and be an electrician, you can go and be a plumber and all of that. I mean, the jobs that used to be sadly looked down on, they're always going to be around. You're always going to need plumbers, electricians, people who can work on helicopters, and these people are making good money. And again,
you can't see it, but it's an open window into the rec center. So
I like that. People it's the fishbowl. People are like, "What are you doing? What's happening in there?" It's a good thing. There can be multiple paths for so many kids out there, and not every kid has to be locked into going to college. Not every kid has to be locked in going to a trade school. They can kind of decide what's and they and their parents can kind of get together and go, this is what we need to do. And so, yeah, I think that's great about Grand Prairie ISD. And if more districts got on board with doing stuff like that, this idea of school choice probably wouldn't be out there. If Houston ISD would allow kids to transfer all over the place, you probably wouldn't see school choice. But because so many school districts are regimented and not allowing people to move in or move out or do this or do that, I think it's going to come back. They think it's, if they believe school choice is going to come back to bite them, which I don't think it will, then that's kind of their own doing on this, because they were just locked into this mentality.
Well, you can transfer if you're going to play football.
That's true. That's true.
I mean, that's a big deal. Like, that is something that is very, I talked to the former GPISD athletic director, Gary Bartell. We were talking about this. It's like, when you work at a Grand Prairie high school and you are limited in it's not a growing area, you have all the people there that are going to be there, and you're trying to create a football program. And then you have a Duncanville high school that's down the street where they can recruit people from all over the place and trying to compete. It's like, that is driving a lot of the decision making. Sports has always driven a lot of the decision making when it comes to public education anyway. And it's like, I mean, we have a high school right now, Dubisky Career High School. There's no extracurricular activities. They're all there because there's a job for them after their high school. And so it's like that they had to decide, okay, do I want to graduate with a degree, or graduate with a certification, or do I want to go to a school that has a band where I can be in the band? And they had to make that choice. And so not every school has to be that way to be successful. But I could get on a whole tangent about how Texas has put so much emphasis on football and stuff when it comes to public school. But I don't know. I think that it's always good to have to shake things up. And it seems like the only thing that shakes things up is losing money, the possibility of losing money. I mean, sometimes that is what it is. But it's very cool that you get to go down there and do that. So are you going to air those interviews during your show? over the period of time? Or are you going to be recording the whole time? Like, how does
No,
that work?
it's all live. It's
Oh,
so
it's
it
all live. Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
yeah, it's all live, and it's where we're set up we're going to be set up in an office, and
Mm.
it's one politician, one elected official after the other who's going to be coming in, and we schedule it to where each interview is about 8 to 10 minutes, and we just get right into the heart of the matter, and yeah, that's 2 days worth of interviews. And I think I may have like one open segment where I get to talk about something that I want to talk about. Otherwise, it's just interview after interview. And then, of course, it'll be available on the podcast as well. So we do the show is podcasted as well.
But that's a long day. So
Yeah.
do you have politicians from both sides of the aisle that'll be on the show?
So probably not on this one. This
Mhm.
one will be a lot of, a lot more on the Republican side. We have had a couple of Democrats on. Honestly, a lot of Democrats don't want to come on the show. I'm a nice guy, but a lot of Democrats, they don't want to come on the show. They don't want to be asked some of the questions that I have for them. I'll say this, Representative Joe Moody, who is also a tech grad, by the way.
Mm.
He's very open to coming on and hanging out. And he may be somebody that we have on. He's Speaker Pro Tem right now, and so he's got a good working relationship with Burroughs. Obviously, they don't agree on everything, but they do have a good working relationship. And I think that's something that is missed. The legislature, and in particular the House, there's a lot of noise on social media about how we don't need to listen to the Democrats and we don't need to have them as friends and all this kind of stuff. Republicans, when it comes to passing constitutional amendments, one of the big constitutional amendments that's out there is water, and trying to get a water infrastructure plan for the entire state. You've got to have 100 votes in order to get it to a constitutional amendment that voters get to vote on. Republicans don't have 100 votes in the Texas House. So they've got to work with Democrats on some issues. And something that a lot of people also forget is that sometimes in the House, and we've seen this with school choice in the past, it's not always Republican versus Democrat. Sometimes it's Dallas Republicans versus Midland Republicans and rural versus urban. And, Texas is a big state, and what's good for Houston, what's good for Dallas, not always good for Lubbock, not always good for Grand Prairie, not always good for, all these different towns. And so sometimes you get that battle that lines up. And so that's always kind of interesting when I have a Houston area rep who wants to push something like getting rid of vote center locations. And I don't know if Grand Prairie has this or not, but in Lubbock was a test trial for this, and other areas have developed this where on election day, you don't have to go to a particular school or particular building. And this is also big during early voting. You have vote center locations where you can go anywhere where the vote center is across the city or across the county and cast your ballot. Well, there are some Republicans in Houston who want to get rid of that because they say it's too messy and it can lead to voter fraud. Whereas out here, we go, no. We can have a set number of vote center locations where everyone can go to. We can hire less people to man those stations because we're having a problem across the state hiring, election workers. And everyone can vote. Everyone can get to an easy place to go and vote. They don't have to remember which elementary school or church to go to in order to cast a ballot.
Especially
so those are some of the issues that pop up.
Yeah, that's, like even in early voting. I mean, we have early voting in Grand Prairie. You can go to any of the early voting locations the whole time. And then it's like on that one day, you have to go to the place that's closest. But what if you work on the other side of town and it's just easier for you to go over there? I mean, I don't. I was actually just in the Capitol for Realtor Day, and we were talking about that water infrastructure bill. And one of the reps said they were having some trouble getting along, which seems to be something that happens in the Texas legislature and has always been that way.
Yeah.
But they were having trouble, kind of getting along with some of this, but that the water infrastructure bill is probably one of the few things that they were going to be able to come to an agreement on and pass. And there's not a hot button topic with some of these things. It's like, how much can you politicize some of these things versus, okay, well, this is just, everybody wants to have water infrastructure. And Texas is weird because, like, I had on during the pandemic, I was like, what is a county judge? Why do we need county judges? And then I got into this whole rabbit hole of like, okay, well, you have these unincorporated parts and there's this county parts and all this stuff. It's like, well, in Waxahachie, we're having that struggle right now. That's a big topic in Waxahachie because, and in Midlothian, because they're incorporating so much county property that doesn't have water infrastructure.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do you do this and still bring development into the city and all that? So it's quite interesting. And some people, like, if you're in Grand Prairie, that might not be something that you think about, but if you're on the outskirts, that's definitely something that you're thinking about. So it is quite interesting how some of these things go. But oh my gosh, we were there with retired teachers that day. There were so many of us in that Capitol building. It was crazy.
Yeah, I remember some of the memes being posted by some of the Capitol onlookers talking about Realtor Day, and it was quite funny. The Realtor Day memes that were out there.
Well, all I know is that whenever I was going through, we were going from, office to office to office. I was like, I would never want to be a Texas legislator because, oh my gosh, I would not want to sit here and listen to all these people come through and talk to me about all the things that mattered. Like, it's just not something that I could do, but bless them for doing that.
Yeah.
Because we got to talk to a lot that day.
Yeah.
And then, some of these property taxes is another one that they were talking about. Just property tax is a big one in the state of Texas. Yeah. And I'm really curious how the vouchers are going to affect how people talk about property taxes. It's just weird. The whole thing is just, it's weird. And it's
then it goes back to, when you're talking about property taxes, it goes back to, a podcast like this, where you're talking to local officials, because the state, unless the state abolishes property taxes, probably not going to happen. But unless the state does that at some point, they can lower property tax to the rates all they want to, and buy back so much from the schools. If you keep passing bond elections, guess what? Your property taxes are going to go up. And so, appraisals are going to go up. I'm in favor of appraisal reform. And that's something that really hasn't been really looked at too much in the Texas legislature, is appraisal reform. But I think a lot of people would enjoy that. But if you look at appraisals in Texas, they ain't going lower. Not anytime soon. They're going to keep going higher. Texas is where people want to be. It's a growing state. I don't care if you're in Grand Prairie or in West Texas. Appraisals keep going up, and they're going to keep going up. In bond elections, people wonder why do we keep, the state legislature did something. Well, did you pass a bond election? Did your city come to you and ask you for more money? They probably did, and they probably will again. And if you keep saying yes, and this is not me saying vote against every bond election, but you have to really know what you're voting for when you get inside the booth. And if you just do a blanket, yeah, sounds good, I want all this fun stuff, it costs a lot of money. Guess what? Grand Prairie's built a lot of fun stuff. Costs money to build a lot of fun stuff.
And what is your tax rate? Yeah. That's the other thing too that people don't put any. They don't think about. I tried to do a podcast about, like, just a little mini episode about this. If you took, so there's all kinds of ranges for that tax percentage. I think Grand Prairie right now is like 2.6. Don't quote me on that. But that just means that 2.6 of your appraised value is going to go to your taxes, but the majority of that is going to go to your school board. So you also have to know, like, where are all the municipalities that all my tax rate is going? So the thing that's funny is Grand Prairie, it does have one of the higher tax rates in the Metroplex. If you took the same house and put it in Frisco that has a lower tax rate, your payment would be lower for that house, the exact same house with the exact same mortgage rate. So if you could put to your point, it's like, okay, we can limit the homestead exemption, But if you just increase the tax rate, then what's the difference? Like it
Yeah.
ends up, it doesn't change anything. But that's where it comes in that people need to go to these meetings
Yeah.
because what the city is able to do that the school board can't is the city can bring in businesses that offset a lot of that tax that they are getting charged. So they can bring in sales tax and stuff like that. School board, that's where their money comes from, unless they get grants and stuff like that. But that's why you'll see all these developments coming through because it's like, oh, okay, well, now that they've incentivized warehouse space, so we're going to pull warehouses in here because then we can get a portion of what they're shipping out. Cities can do that. School boards can't. But we also build tons of infrastructure for
Yeah.
school boards. Like, why do we need to have buildings that are like 3 blocks long? Why can't that costs money? All
Yeah.
those things cost money. But those are the little bitty things that nobody's paying any attention to in a city. So you can hear all this stuff, but it doesn't actually equate to saving you money in the long run. And
Right.
that's where I think realtors could come in and really do a lot more like local, because we understand how those property tax things actually work. And there's tax appraisers that work for the county appraisal. You vote for them.
Yeah.
Most people probably don't even realize that that you vote for these people that then turn around and charge and assess your property tax.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And those are important races,
Yeah.
but I guarantee those are just the last things. They're coming there to vote for the mayor. Hey, there's my dad. He didn't see me. He just walked by. But they're going to vote for the mayor and they're like, what are these elections? I don't know what these are. We'll just, okay, that looks good. Da, 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 da. And it's like, those are really important.
Yeah.
Those ones at the end are very, very important.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah. Yeah. Well, so I think that's very cool. I would love to get into something like that too, but I feel like doing what you do, I think that'd be kind of interesting. But
it's fun. It's a blast. I mean,
it
getting to speak with a lot of the elected officials, it's fun, but at the same time, there's, I want to get real answers from them, and and I don't beat them over the head, or I don't try to be rude to them, but and there are some elected officials who take the back and forth and criticism a lot better than others. We had a former mayor who did not take criticism well, whereas we've had mayors who have said, I understand you've got a role here. You need to question what we do and everything. So that's, I understand where you're coming from. There's not one politician alive that I've agreed with 100%. Not one alive that I've agreed with 100% of the time. And so, it's one of those where I try to keep everybody honest. I try to hold all their feet to the fire because, that's just me keeping people honest. Now there's some elected officials that I do like better than others. But that's just going to happen. And then there are some who want to come on the show and others who don't. One of the big interviews that I had years ago was when Beto O'Rourke came on, and people were shocked that Beto O'Rourke came on the show. But this was when he was running against Ted Cruz for Senate. And he came in studio. He brought his crew with him. They filmed it. We were filming. We did an hour, and it was great radio. And we didn't leave agreeing with each other, but we left having a good conversation. And his interview blew up because I had asked him about the issue of guns and the Second Amendment. And he at the time said that if you like your AR-15, keep it. If you like your AR, you can keep it. I don't want to do away with them. If you're a responsible gun owner, and you hear this a lot from politicians, I grew up in Texas. I'm a hunter. I've gone hunting. Okay. That doesn't mean you're pro Second Amendment, whatever. And so he did that whole thing. And then I asked him, do you want to get rid of the border wall? Do you want to get rid? No, we want to leave all that. A year later, he's running for president of the United States. And he was asked in an interview, or I think it was at a rally, he said, hell yes, we're going to take away your AR-15s. Well, CNN, Fox, guess whose clip they found? Me interviewing Beto O'Rourke when he said, no, you can keep it. And and my phone started blowing up because it's like, well, you're, and like CNN's calling me going, can we use your interview? Can we do this? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And it's just like, that was the two sides of Beto O'Rourke. And so it's always good to have these politicians on because they'll change like that. If they think it's the politically expedient thing to do, they will change as quickly as possible to win an election. And I think that was one of his downfalls as a candidate, was that he tried to campaign. We never knew who the real Beto O'Rourke was. Was it the guy who ran further to the left as president, or was it the guy who ran further to the middle trying to take down Ted Cruz and almost beat Ted Cruz? Who was the real Beto O'Rourke? And so that question really started percolating out there once my interview from a year, beforehand popped back up. And, then he started being asked on CNN, well, you said this on this show, how do you really feel? And he came up with this answer of, well, once there was a school shooting in Texas, I changed my views on it. I'm like, come on. Like that means you have no foundation. You can't just change like that. We all knew school shootings had happened beforehand and everything else. So
yeah. Well, it's hard because even with the pandemic, I know that a lot, myself included, there's a lot of opinions that I had that changed after that.
Oh, sure.
And it's like, you can change your mind, but just be honest about it. Go, I used to feel this way, but now I feel this way. And this is why I feel this way. And if you do that, then it's at least you're giving people the background of why you've changed your mind. And that's, but if you just, it depends on who you're talking to. And that's going to be the answer. That's the real problem. It's not really the answer. It's are you just saying that to the person that is interviewing?
Yeah. Which audience are you in front of?
Exactly. Because I would have a totally different opinion about a lot of things, from before. And when I became a parent, there's things that changed my mind.
Sure.
So that's not really the problem. It's like, who is your authentic self?
Yeah.
And I think that it's difficult for politicians especially, but it's not always politicians. Some people just have a hard time being an authentic person.
Yeah. No, that's true.
That can just do that. So, that, and you're not going to always get along with everybody. Yeah. I mean, have you ever been on a committee, even a church committee, like let's do this event? You're not going to agree with everybody on there, but everybody has their opinions, and you just kind of learn to work with each other.
Church committees can be cutthroat compared to politics.
What are you talking about? I don't know what you mean.
No, and you're right. Not everyone's going to like you. Lord knows. Not everyone's going to like you when you do something, when you're involved in politics, when you do what I do for a living. Oh boy, have I heard it from some people who are just, they get enraged by things I say, which I kind of like. We get a lot of text messages in, and like I have these people who will and I love them because they're listeners, but they'll text in about how wrong I am. And how some people will say, I can't stand what you say. I can't stand the show, but they're texting every day. And, it's like, thanks for listening. You're still, hey,
why are you listening? Yeah.
Exactly. Your support's out there. And, it's an old Howard Stern deal of half the people who tune in are going to hate you, or at least disagree with you, but they're going to tune in because they want to hear what you're going to say. And so that once I got over that, there was a point when I got into radio where I was like, I want everyone to like me. I want everyone to have positive views. And my mom, God bless my mom. I love my mom. But she's my mom. And so she can't, when people will post mean things on social media, my mom's like, how do you, I can't, she's like, my heart hurts when I see some of these things that people say. And I'm like, they don't, they're not important, or, what, they're just mad. They're just mad people. And I'm like, I ignore them. I have fun with it. But I had to get past that. You have to be liked by everyone. And
that's a tolerance thing too, because it's like some people can't tolerate rocking the boat. It's very hard for them. And so, my parents are always, like, even with this whole newspaper thing and trying to get a digital newsletter, it's like, are we going to be are we going to be like an investigative journalist? And are we going to, are we going to be more like, let's get the news out there to everybody? And
Yeah.
it's like the investigative journalist, it's like, and that's not really my scene, but it's like, if you're going to put a story out there about a local elected official, that's not a popular story, a lot of people in the city are going to be mad at you.
Yeah.
And we just had a city councilman that was arrested. And the comments on that particular, the journalist that released that story, he had to be willing to be like, okay, well, I'm going to put this out there and it's not going to be popular. But it takes a different type of person to do that. Not everybody is meant to be that type of person.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that aren't that way. And so your mom looking at you, oh, poor honey, I just want you not to, I don't want people to hate you. I love you so much. You're my little boy. I get it. She's your mom.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and it's funny because after the Trump reelect too, boy, but that's had quite the impact on some folks and on social media. And I've had even some people who I went to high school with who have never been that political, who like they think I hate them, or they're mad at me now and all kinds of stuff. And I'm like, I want the best for you. We may disagree. I don't get too political on Facebook because I look at Facebook as the family friendly area. Twitter or X is the Wild West, where you can be the gunslinger and do whatever you want to. I try not to get into debates on Facebook. I used to. Now it's just like I want to keep up with friends, and if you want to get political, that's fine. But I'm not gonna get involved in that. And then I've got some people who just like to troll, and that's fine. And it's but it's we had a conversation the other day on the radio show because I had a guy who called in and said that he's lost all these friends, after Trump got reelected. And I'm like, see, that's sad. We should be able to, if you're friends before someone got elected, you should still be friends. You don't have to talk politics. You don't let politics ruin a good friendship. Definitely don't let politics ruin family relationships. You got to get past that somehow. And no matter what, Trump's not always, Obama wasn't going to always be around. Trump's not always going to be around. There's going to be someone new at some point, trashing friendships that some people have done on both sides of the aisle. To me, just doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
No, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to get local again, because it's like we have to have some kind of unity, And I had the same issue. Like, I mean, I've seen high school friends and all that. I mean, same for me, but we gotta come together somehow. It can't be that way forever. You said something, and I was just going to ask you a question. Now I can't remember what I was going to say. I don't take notes usually. It's usually I can keep. I was going to ask you, is there anything, we were talking about changing your mind, is there any like positions that you had when you first started doing radio that have shifted now? Like if you were to go back and listen to yourself, you're like, oh, I can't believe I believe that, or I can't believe that I said that.
I was probably a little bit more libertarian. I'm still libertarian on some issues. But I was probably more open to recreational marijuana being legalized when I was younger. Not that I ever did it. Promise, Mom, I didn't do it. And I never did. I never did any trial. I was a good boy. Although I do have a story about a high school class I could get into if you want me to. I think the statute of limitations have passed. But I was much more open to that. But since I've seen just some of the stories about how it's a lot, that the marijuana is a lot stronger now, the recreational marijuana is a lot stronger now. And I've been to cities that have legalized it, and the stench is just all over the place. I've kind of gotten away from that. I'm much more pro legalization, much more medical marijuana and pro medical marijuana, because I think you can regulate that a lot more. But that's probably one of my big views that have changed since then. I can't think of really anything else where I've just, completely changed or shifted on anything.
Mm. Well, you can tell the story about the class. I remember that I interviewed Jeff Copeland, and Jeff Copeland was one of the city manager, but city councilman. And I always like to ask people, and I'll ask you too, what was the way that you spent your time in high school, and how far south did the city go whenever you were in high school? Because if you talk to somebody in the 60s that graduated in the 60s, it only went as far as like not even 303.
Yeah.
But if you got, somebody now, it's like all the way down to almost down to Austin. No, I'm just kidding. It's not that far.
Pretty much.
It's almost that far.
Grand Prairie and Austin merged. That's scary.
Yeah, exactly. And Jeff goes, they were talking about a prank that they did for the North-South game. And he's like, I don't know if this, I still don't think I can tell that story. I just got my ass be in some trouble. So what were you going to say about your class?
No, well, I'll just put it this way. I'm not going to name any names, but somebody brought in, and I was probably maybe a sophomore. Yeah, I think I was a sophomore in high school. Very, very naive. And I was in a science class with some high school seniors and football players. Who one of the football players on one of the final days of school wanted to bring in brownies for the class. The teacher approved it, by the way. The teacher said, yes, as long as you bring 2 for everyone, including myself.
Would she know what kind of brownies?
If she did, boy, she did not let on, because she devoured those 2 brownies. And so did the rest of the class, by the way. And
so y'all are the reason why we can't bring cupcakes for kids anymore.
That's probably it. That's probably it. Yeah.
I didn't even think about that. Oh my gosh. Yeah. You can't bring homemade stuff to school anymore.
And I know exactly who it was. I'm not going to name any names, but you know who you are too. If you watch this podcast, you know the teacher, the science class. Yeah. But no, that was interesting. So what did I do? I guess during just during free time, all that.
Yeah, like how did you spend? Like, what would you do on like the weekends when you were in high school?
Boy, I had a great group of friends. We would all hang out. We would get into trouble. We would pull pranks on each other. We would just hang out whenever I wasn't working. I mean, I worked at Chili's. I worked at Cheddar's. I worked at, what was the name of, was it Fontana's Italian? Do you remember that?
I kind of do. Yeah.
It was behind Sonic, and it was logged off 20 years ago. But it was like a little mom and pop Italian food restaurant. And so I worked there, and so I was, I always worked. That was something that was instilled for me to do. So when I wasn't working, I was hanging out with friends from high school and from church, and getting into trouble. Driving to the stockyards on a Friday or Saturday night and driving around like, this will get the chicks. Oh yeah.
You know what? Every single guy that I talked to, no matter when they graduated, driving around is a part of what they did.
Yeah.
No. Driving around. I mean, that's just crazy.
Yeah. No, we would get in my truck that had Flowmasters on it, of course. And we would drive around, and then we'd be like, hey, let's go out to the stockyards. Or when it was teen night at Cowboys, we'd go out to Cowboys. Hello. And we would do a little bit of that. And so, so there was that. There were maybe times, I don't know, where a street race would happen from time to time. Don't know if I dreamed that or if it actually happened or not.
I hear a lot, actually. Like when it was my parents, whenever they were there in the 70s, well, they graduated in 1971, they would go on Main Street. And they would drive on Main Street. Jeff Copeland, if it was the early 80s, it was on Cooper. Evidently, that's where they would drag race. It was on Cooper because they hadn't built the mall yet.
Okay.
And if you go back even further, some of those people went down to the lake because you
Yeah.
could race, because nothing had been built over by the lake. Which I was like, that's so crazy. I didn't do that. Like, girls didn't go driving around places. I mean, I didn't.
What did y'all do? What did the girls do?
We went to
Because
the
we
mall.
were always looking for the girls.
We went to the mall. We went to Six Flags Mall and then Parks Mall when it was built.
That was the
Yep.
problem. We were always looking for the girls, and
Or-
we were going to the wrong places.
Or we would go to the coffee shop, because that was back. I graduated in '98, so that was back in the Friends days when the Central Perk was,
the Brass Bean.
The Brass Bean. We would go to
Yeah.
the Brass Bean. They had very cute baristas, and so we would go and we would just sit there and spend all this time. And
There wasn't a Gunther working at the Brass Bean.
No. There was like, oh, okay. There was the older boys, older high school kids that we were like, oh, they're so dreamy. And so, but I did spend a lot of time at church too. I think a lot of us did back in the 90s. That was a big thing in Grand Prairie for sure.
Yeah. A lot of church, a lot of good memories with church.
Yeah. Wrapping houses.
Yes, we did that. We would do that a couple of times. Yeah.
So no, it was fun. It was fun, but I always like to hear those stories.
And then I guess as far back as south, I mean, as far south as we would go, would it be the lake? Would it be Joe Pool Lake?
Really, it was that, but like even like Trailwood was probably like the southernmost neighborhood.
Yeah.
Really, of course, I remember when they built the Chili's, and we thought we were a big deal. They built the Cinemark Movie 16, and then they built the Chili's, and that was pretty far south at that point. I mean, that was South Grand Prairie. Now that's like mid Grand Prairie, really.
And that again, it just blows my mind how that is, how far south has gone, and like how far south Westchester, has gotten now. And I don't know. I think it's cool. I think it's cool to see. I think it's wonderful to see just how big Grand Prairie has gotten. And
it's the longest city in Texas. Did you know that?
What's that?
The longest city from top to bottom.
I believe it. Yeah. When I first brought my wife to Grand Prairie, she's like, well, this place isn't very big, because we drove through it on I-20. She's like, this isn't very big. I'm like, it's not wide. We're not a wide city.
No,
we're a tall city. We're a tall city. And so she realized that after we went from like the north side of town over on Lone Star Park, and we drove all the way. She's like, okay, yeah, this is sizable. That's for sure.
Where's she from?
She's from Lubbock.
Oh, she is.
Yeah, she's from Lubbock, and so she grew up here. We met at church, and now we moved just outside the city limits, and so it's kind of nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that is so cool. Well, I really appreciate you coming on. It's been a pleasure. It's always fun for me to talk to other people that their job is to talk.
Yeah. No, this has been fun. This has been a lot of fun.
Well, good. I hope you'll be back on soon. You can come back on and talk about the result of your Capitol visit.
Yeah. No, anytime you want me, just let me know. And you can tell I like to talk. So, hey, this is good. We can do this whenever.
Sounds good. Thanks, Chad. Have a good day.
All right. Thank you. Go SGP.
Go SGP. But also thumbs up, because I went to Tech too. So
yeah, wreck 'em. There you go.
Yeah, that's right. Bye.
See you later. That was fun. Thank you.
I'm glad that you came on. Like, that's really, I part of me wishes I could do something like what you're doing.
Yeah.
But I mean, I feel like God is leading me to do this, like the local side. But I would love to, like when Junior wanted to talk all that politics stuff, I was like, I really need to have a portion of the podcast. Maybe it could be dedicated to just politics. Like, that's kind of how I see it, is like the podcast could be, I could have one that's just local sports talk, just, all the different playlists that you could put together, restaurant reviews. We have tons of restaurants now, lots of music and stuff like that. But it's like, people won't listen unless they know what they're going there to listen to. They won't listen to all. They just don't want to sit there and listen to people argue.
Right.
They just don't. Most people don't like having those kinds of
Yeah.
don't like listening to
No,
those.
I think the open conversation, the long form, I think that's a good place to be.
Yeah, yeah. And really it's just and I just opened up the senior internships. And I've had 3 people apply.
That's
3
awesome.
I know, it's really exciting. And then for the GPISD, I'm going to have interns apply in the fall. So it'll be really cool, I think. I think it'll be a good thing. But, you know, you got people, there's still people that don't know what podcast is.
Yeah.
So you got to teach them.
That's true.
But yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate it again.
Yeah, you bet. Have a great day.
All right. You too. Bye.
See you later. Bye.